Fantastic. All right. Well, hi, everyone. Welcome to Martech for 2023, the really big picture. I am Scott Brinker. I am the editor-chief Martech.com and the VP of Platform Ecosystem at HubSpot. And I'm joined by
Frans Riemersma, founder of MartechTribe, helping companies with benchmarking stacks, and Martech enthusiast together with Scott. So welcome.
Awesome. Well, wow, everyone. 2022 has been a roller coaster of a year, right? Coming out of a pandemic, sliding towards a recession, geopolitical conflict. NFTs are hot. NFTs are dead. Metaverse is hot. Metaverse is dead. Twitter and chaos, the great resignation, quiet quitting. What a crazy year. You know, and as we were thinking about 2023, boy, it's looking like it's going to be a pretty wild ride too, right? Budgets tightened, performance challenged, media fragmented, talent stretched thin, global economy unknown, technology still changing rapidly. So with that backdrop, how are you doing? Challenged, I am sure, as we all are. But, you know, it's great to come together with you because from this crucible of all this change that we're in, this is really how we forge the future. And this is something we are doing together. We are writing the future of marketing. So today we are going to take a journey with you together on what we see for 2023. But first, I'd like to begin just by thanking our sponsors. So we had the great folks at SAS. No matter what your level of marketing maturity, marketing solutions from SAS enable growth with purpose. Also sponsored by Uptempo. Uptempo gives CMOs clarity on the financial and business impact of their marketing efforts so they can plan better, pivot faster, spend smarter, and execute with confidence. And the good folks at Calendly. Integrate Calendly's scheduling automation into your MarTech stack and help convert leads, connect with prospects faster, and improve business workflows. Learn why leading marketers trust Calendly by visiting calendly.com. Just a huge thank you to these sponsors. They provide the financial support that allows Frans and I to do our research, to be able to share not just the research with you, but some exciting updates to martechmap.com that you're going to see in just a minute, and you get all of this completely free. We'd also like to say a special thank you to a few other sponsors. Certainly the event platform sponsor, Goldcast. You're all experiencing their wonderful event platform here today. And then two data sponsors, G2 and Clearbit, who have very generously shared their data sets with us to provide all sorts of exciting enrichment to the martechmap.com interactive MarTech landscape. Frans is going to be giving you a walk through that and some really fascinating analysis that's enabled. And so with that, let's get off to the races. Frans.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Scott. Really happy with the sponsors because there's so much to discover and to share with the MarTech community. We've done some amazing MarTech updates, martechmap.com updates, if I may say so myself. Yes, we've been cooking nice scrambled egg, really well seasoned, I think, and a lot of ingredients, very healthy. So if we move on to what we have done. So remember the last time we were together, I assume you all attended the MarTech Day in May, the first time that we did such an event. And we launched not only a new version of MarTech Map, a clickable PDF, we also launched an online version. It was a kind of a hack version, but it was really doing its job. And you guys embraced it really generously. There are so many people that subscribed that we thought, you know what? We are going to pimp it and bring it to the next level. We launched, because of this MarTech Map, we could launch easily new country websites. And fascinating how vibrant and lively this MarTech community is, because people really on logo levels go like, shouldn't this be there? Could we change it? Actually, I'm out of business. Can you remove my logo? I mean, that type of care about our business is just so, heartwarming. It's amazing. So we put all our effort into a new version of martechmap.com. And what you see on top is a whole lot of filters. Not only that, I will come to that in a second, What we also did is we completely rebuilt, refactored the entire thing. So it's now React, Node.js, sorry, and MongoDB, NoSQL. So we're so happy, and it performs a lot better, and we can add a lot more logos to it, and a lot more filters. So you can slice and dice, and we brought it to, we passed the mark of 10,000 vendors, not just for the sake of it, but it's just growing and growing. We can't help it. If we launch these super graphics, people come with more tools. Can we also be on the map? Well, we're so happy with the collaboration with G2 and Clearbit, because they allow you to create filters like ratings you see down below. But you can combine ratings with a subcategory and a certain age of a company and the size in terms of revenue or staff count, whatever you want, slice and dice through it. We couldn't stop ourselves. So you can sign up if you didn't already. And the problem is that so many possibilities are there that the big danger is that you get really, really addicted. And what you see is that in the previous slide, Scott, for a second, if you could share that with me, that it's so seriously addictive, and I recognize addiction when I see one. I'm from Amsterdam. So what you see here on the upper right corner is 3 different types of analysis we could do with the data we had. But with G2 and Clearbit, we can dive deeper. So we had a long tail, and the tail is getting longer and longer. It's like an explosion of small tools. But then you see there's more tools, but you also see in that colored graph over there, it's content and social really spiking there. So we thought it makes sense to dive deeper, and we couldn't help ourselves. And you see the average age by subcategory that we dived into. It will help you if you want to see which of these colors are red or green and white. Just filter on Martech Map. But what you see here and what struck us is that ad tech is basically one of the oldest type of Martech there is, as opposed to the other 2 ones. And you see the graph on the right, content and social. And funny enough, those are pretty relatively young as opposed to ad tech. So what is happening? We were thinking, is it the fact that ad tech is ahead of the curve or maybe behind the curve? And if you look at the scatter plot down below, you can zoom in once you have the PDF. You can download it already from Goldcast. We see the more vendors in the subcategory are there when the Martech is older. So there is no consolidation happening within the categories. That would suggest that maybe ad tech is behind the curve. Let's figure out in the next slide. So we looked at, are people happy with younger or older tools? And here's the answer. On the left-hand side, you see more green than on the right-hand side. And those columns represent the pull down in martechmap.com, so you can play around. And what you see here is that we are happier with younger tools. So the older the Martech, the lower the rating. How does that happen? Is that legacy issues or what is it? So we looked even deeper, and we looked at, does it have to do with the size of a company? So if you click, you will see the next slide where we looked at the vendor size, software vendor, and it looks like the smaller the vendor, the higher the rating. So is this because we have a shorter distance to clients? We can tune into that and tap into that. Smaller tools, maybe feature sets are smaller, so it's easier to maintain and optimize. That's very interesting. It feels like a kind of, it's fragmenting, it's atomizing in some way or shape. So in the next slide, we looked at not only vendor size, we also looked at ratings, the staff, and revenue and age. Same pattern we see over there. So we started to come up with a hypothesis here. So the older and older, larger companies are at risk of being disrupted by innovative young startups. Fascinating. So in the next slide, we looked at what categories are then, more consolidating. And you see the red arrow, which is ad tech. It has been consolidating somehow since 2015, whereas the other big Martech like content and social keep, leading the pack of Martech at large. Fascinating. If we go to the next slide, we have the final slide here where we couldn't help ourselves and start to look in, okay, how many tools are mentioned in categories in almost 1,000 stacks, as opposed to what is their rating. And we just rated and ranked them from top to bottom, most popular to least popular. And what do we see? we see at the bottom that, the most used MarTech is not always the most liked. Actually, it's the opposite. And they're coloring red, meaning ad tech mostly. At the top, you see 3 different ones. Those are the most liked and most used MarTech. And they are the likes of iPaaS, web analytics, collaboration tools, actually kind of integration type of tools that aggregate, bring people together, data together, content together. That brought us to the perception of what is going on in this market. And it looks like on the one hand, we have atomization, and on the other hand, we have aggregation. And we couldn't figure it out what is actually now happening, because they're 2 opposing forces to the same spectrum. On the next slide, we just summed it up and say, okay, so they're younger and smaller, the higher the ratings. It looks really like big guys are being disrupted by the smaller ones. AdTech is the oldest. It doesn't look they're ahead of the curve, but behind. And if we look at the clients that we talk to and the people we talk to in the market space, retail monetization could even democratize AdTech. It's something that is really announcing itself. On the other hand, we have aggregation moves where most used and most liked MarTech are all aggregating, integrating type of technologies. Okay, that's confusing. So what is atomization? It's breaking things up in smaller pieces, and aggregation is clustering them together. So what is going on in MarTech, we thought? The next slide pretty much explains it. Atomization is happening at a market level, whereas aggregation is happening on a stack level. One is pulling things apart, the other one is bringing them back together, pulling them together. And that makes a lot of sense, because if we're happy with those smaller tools, they are very intuitive and they do one task really well and integrate with only those supply chain partners that they have to connect to, then suddenly we get a kind of a Lego landscape. We have more atomized, smaller tools doing one task really intuitively well, so that you guys, or we marketing ops, MarTech enthusiasts, we can bring it together and craft that customer experience that clients really want. Wow, that's a big opportunity. And it is coinciding with, or not coinciding, is maybe triggering or fueled by Mac architectures and more trends like these, microservices, API first, cloud native, headless. Oh boy, it's making all sense now. And we translate it into many of the conversations we have, many of the terminology that is out there. And if you look at technology, for instance, you see on the one hand, technology, democratization of MarTech, marketing ops, software as a service, all those things we know for years they're coming up. We have workflow iPaaS, and the smallest common denominator is feature set. So basically we go into not a big best of suite or whatever. Not that it is bad, but it's really best of feature that we focus on. Even in a suite, you can focus on what is best of feature. But it's not only technology. Data is living in technology. And the same thing happens there as well. We have to break it down to the smallest point, atomization, to look at those data points that really convert, that really bring those moments of truth for a specific customer. Not for one customer, for the entire company, for that proposition or for that type of product or service. So it's also democratization of data. And we hear about data ops, we hear about data as a service, headless CDP and public clouds. It's all coming together. But if we have technology and data, we still have to talk back to clients. So also content will be broken down into smaller pieces, down to the level of a digital asset. Not all assets we need. We don't need all data points. We don't need all software. We need those ones that really convert. And how do we find those? Well, atomization helps, and aggregation is our task internally in our stacks, not only for technology, also for data and content. So we need democratization of content, content ops, content as a service. We don't hear enough about that yet. And it's something in 2023 and onwards, we believe it will happen, because if you look at the last row, you see best of integration is workflow iPaaS, data iPaaS, all sorts of things we're all familiar with. But content iPaaS, we really struggle to find some of those vendors. There are a handful that do this stuff, and it's really not so mature yet. They do a great job, but there's a lot of potential there. And Scott, this is a great point. You are going to dig into all these trends that you see here, technology, data, and content. Please take it away, because you have found really amazing tools and amazing trends here.
Super. Well, yeah, remember everyone, right after this session, please do go and sign up at martechmap.com if you haven't, and start running some of your own analysis of what's happening in the Martech landscape. But there are 5 topics we wanted to dive a little bit deeper in here as we look to what most marketers are going to be wrestling with in 2023 with Martech. I want to start with generative AI and personalization, which is certainly the hot topic, this past month here. Now, for a while, we in marketing have been leaning into adopting more and more AI. But for the most part, we've been thinking about it largely as machine learning, being able to take the large amount of data that we now have access to and be able to identify patterns within that data, whether it's for, segmenting particular prospects and customers or identifying, which particular customer journeys are having the greatest impact. Don't get me wrong, there's a tremendous amount of value that we can get out of sort of this analytical machine learning. But what's happened this year is a different kind of AI, what is collectively called generative AI. These AI tools that are able to create net new content have gone from being, frankly, science fair projects to things that are now starting to really deliver impressive results. This map by the great folks over at Sequoia, just shows some of the different companies in these different spaces. Certainly text generative AI has been becoming incredibly popular this year. A number of great companies in this space. If you want to check out one, for instance, Jasper AI. It's not about like turning over content production 100%, to an AI tool, but it's really more about giving superpowers to marketers, particularly content marketers, to be able to leverage this AI to accelerate their production of everything from, blog posts to all sorts of more specialized content. There's a whole universe of these AI writing tools that our good friends at AI Content Gen have been mapping out for some time. And a bunch of them cost less than $20 a month. I mean, this is, as Frans was talking about, the democratization of content. It is coming in a really big way. And this is going to make things really interesting for us, in marketing. You could argue we've already been in a state of content shock, for many years here now. Well, with AI multiplying the quantity of content that's going to be generated, it's going to be really interesting to see, like, the arms race, the balancing, between these AI content writers and search engine algorithms. My good friend Tom Fishburne every week has a Marketunist slide. This one: consumers want communication that is human, empathetic, and real. So hopefully our AI can learn to generate content like that for them. Well, it actually is starting to get there. So some of you might have been playing around with ChatGPT, that was released this past week. To be helpful to our sponsors, we asked ChatGPT, hey, could you suggest a template for follow-up email to attendees? And wow, 2 seconds later, ChatGPT generates one. I mean, several people have already noted this. This is going to change the game on even things like search engines when these, AI agents are able to go out, synthesize a bunch of information, and bring it back and summarize it to us. So, boy, lots of changes on the content marketing world. But it's not just content marketing. Even as we move people further along, through the customer journey, we were just looking at a AI content tool, Reggie AI, that generates personalized custom emails for sales development reps. And again, we'll take a look at some of the interesting ways in which you can start to feed these personalization algorithms in all sorts of exciting new ways. But, again, these tools, to Frans's point, although there's an atomization of all these innovative tools, increasingly they do focus also on being aggregated by plugging into common platforms as well, too. And boy, you think the stuff with GPT-3 is exciting, right? It's rumored GPT-4 is going to be released maybe this month, maybe early next year. And early estimates suggest that it might be 500 times more powerful than GPT-3. So, yeah, things are about to get really, really interesting. And it's not just text. We see this with, image generation. A number of you, I suspect, have been playing around with DALL-E and Midjourney, Stable Diffusion. In fact, all the art in this presentation was generated by DALL-E for less than $20. Scott Galloway actually recently wrote a post where he was looking at the data of, traffic to common stock photography sites like iStock and Getty Images and Shutterstock. And you can see OpenAI and Midjourney, they're starting to rival that. I think it's going to be a very interesting year ahead, for the stock photography world. And it's not just about generating content. Again, even for all this incredible content we already have, we're seeing now AI tools that are increasingly being used to meta tag assets, that are also connecting this content to the machine learning of performance data, so we can identify best converting content for different segments and really lean into return on content. This generation, Marcel Poursoit, did this experiment with Midjourney the other week here, that he prompted it to create landing page templates. I included the prompts he used here. Actually, for like a few seconds of, one of these tools generating this stuff, these are kind of scarily good landing page templates. So, how is this going to change the field of, design as well, too? And again, it's not just static content, but even like, video content, so many amazing tools we've been looking at, like, Runway, that again gives these superpowers, to marketers, who are editing and creating videos. Another one like Video AI, I was just looking at the other day, where you give it, your long form video. In fact, I'm going to give it the, complete recording of the session we're doing today. And then it instantly generates shorts for you that you can push to TikTok or Instagram or YouTube or LinkedIn. Say you don't have a video yet? Well, you can use a tool like Synthesia that all you have to do is type in the script, of what you want a video to say, and it generates the video. It generates the artificial people, delivering this video, and it's getting scary good. But what's so exciting, again, I want to go back to, what Frans was talking here about, this whole content, dimension, matching best of feature, best of data, best of content, that this explosion of content is going to allow us to generate content based on so many different, dimensions. We've been talking about personalization in marketing for, oh my goodness, 20, 25 years, and it's, to date been so-so, right? Kind of, mostly just, these very small substitutions. This is now the ability for these tools to dynamically generate, cohesive content based on demographics, firmographics, technographics, psychographics, behavioral insight signals, engagement histories, experimental cohorts. We were looking at this tool, Crystal, that helps analyze, prospects and customers, to identify their personality graph. It can you can point it using this like Chrome plugin, at people's like LinkedIn profiles, and it does that analysis. And then you can start to tailor your content for what their personality seems to best fit. And again, this is an atomization of functionality, but it's then being connected on the back end with aggregation to integrate into core platforms. And we're just getting started around this. Some of the early experiments IBM Watson did, for psychographics, well, that was kind of cool as a standalone thing. But when you get to a place where you can start to feed that dynamically into content that is being generated, for these different audiences, wow, we're just going to be on an incredible journey of innovation here for the next several years. Aaron Levy, the CEO of Box, always, witty insights to share. So the best startup ideas tend to be found when there's a technology shift that enables customers to solve problems 10 times faster, cheaper, or better. Cloud was one of those. Mobile was one of those. AI is going to be one of those too. All right, that's probably the biggest trend we are excited about, but there are others. Trend number 2, we've been talking about this quite a bit this year, this activating of cloud data warehouses. Because to feed all of this personalization, the single greatest barrier is being able to get access to all the right data from across our organization. This has really been the rise of the data ops ecosystem that has become so influential for marketing and Martech. For a while, we thought of data as a very linear journey, right? Things that generate data, we sort of filter it all down into a warehouse or a data lake, and then we might do some analysis ad hoc on the other end, and that's kind of where it stopped. but now these tools are increasingly connected together in more of a cycle. Thomas Tung is the just amazing, VC at Redpoint, writes a great blog of, technology trends, really sees this as a series of now feedback loops, that are happening between, these frontline apps that are creating all this data, driving it into the warehouse, but then we're able to transform it and model it and, manipulate it and then feed that back into those frontline apps, and continue a truly virtuous cycle. And to be honest, this is a landscape that is still in evolution as we speak, right? There are lots of different tools in this data ops ecosystem for MarTech. Certainly cloud data warehouses at the foundation, but we've got some folks who are using CDPs. We've got some folks who are using reverse ETL. We've certainly got, a large swath of the market that's feeding this into their CRMs, and very often, combinations of these together. But just thinking about the integration that's now happening to the cloud data warehouse, it's not just a static repository, but it's becoming an interactive component in our stack. This is just a subset, of the MarTech products that have launched native Snowflake integrations, including HubSpot and Salesforce and Demandbase and so on. And so this is where things get really exciting. This is just the data layers we've traditionally thought about for things like customer data, and to a certain extent, operational data. But now, this opportunity for the content layer to really be entwined into the MarTech stack in a very parallel way and intersected between customer data and content data. Things are about to get really exciting. All right, trend number 3, ecosystems and community. There's definitely been a shift, particularly over this past 5 years, at the highest level in the C-suite and in the boardroom, where companies are realizing, they're not just, these isolated points in particular market. It's not that they just have point-to-point partnerships or distribution relationships. They live in ecosystems. The digital world, everything is adjacent to everything else, And so McKinsey did an analysis, of all of these industries that are now really being driven by ecosystems, these webs of interrelated companies, products and services being provided to folks, and together this has become almost a $70 trillion view of how the world economy is organized. In the tech world, we certainly see this, and increasingly more and more companies are tech companies. Frans is going to talk about that in a bit, but inside an ecosystem of a tech company, like HubSpot, like we have independent software vendors, but we also have systems integrators, resellers, managed service providers, distributors, consultants, and many companies. Jay McBain of Canlis, has identified that most customers, technology companies, they have like 7 different, touch points with different companies who help create the total solution for them. Certainly some of the research IBM has done on this is companies who lean into this ecosystem strategy and operational approach. They're generating higher revenue growth, higher profitability, and they're really becoming leaders in innovation, because innovating with partners in an ecosystem, has so much power. And to me, this has changed the landscape of MarTech. I actually call this the second age of MarTech. Then the first age of MarTech, the past couple decades, it was all this dichotomy of suite versus best of breed, or software versus services, or build versus buy. On these past couple of years, through this ecosystem lens, we've seen this convergence. It's not suite versus best of breed. It's platform ecosystems, these foundational platforms that are open, and have these wonderful marketplaces, of all these other providers who plug into it. This leans into the services world, where it's now blended models of software and service. And even in the way that we now customize stacks, for our particular business, it's not just build versus buy, but it's creating these customizations on top of those commercial platforms. It's really an incredible ecosystem world, even just from this tech perspective, right? Cloud infrastructure like, Google and Azure and, AWS, they all have their ecosystems. And on top of that, you have app platforms like, HubSpot and Salesforce and Adobe that have all their ecosystems on top of that. And then you have specialist apps, that, plug into these platforms, things like Canva that have their all ecosystem. And then all these things are serving your business, which no doubt has its own ecosystem, as well too. So it is ecosystems all the way down, which is one of the reasons we've seen this incredible explosion of all this like ecosystem technology, over the past few years. We just published a report here, on the state of partner ops, and how much innovation is happening here. Really, this ability to feed the second party data coming out of these relationships opens up so much opportunities in marketing and MarTech for the year ahead. So to come back to Aaron again, another tweet of his: mobile and cloud drove the last wave of enterprise software disruption. Now, there are huge opportunities to disrupt markets with multiplayer experiences, apps with built-in ecosystems, down-market solutions, read Atomization, and lower-cost tools due to cloud economics. Tons of opportunity ahead. We couldn't agree more. All right, well, feeding into this is trend number 4, this continued rise of no-code in-house creators. So all this change, all this innovation happening around us, where is the biggest challenge? Which there's so many companies, it's like actually implementing these things, putting them to use. Like this data from the folks at Information Week found that the most common complaints, still today for internal customers about IT is just the length of the backlog, how long it takes to get something done. Even for simple automations, the average backlog, can, for 75% of these folks, takes 3 or more months. And they don't even know how long it takes. The folks at Pantheon did a study earlier this year, asking how long it takes for people to get updates made to their website. It is crazy. For 56% of those respondents, it takes them a month or more. In fact, actually, for 25 of the respondents, it takes 3 months or more, right? I mean, we cannot operate in this environment of such rapid change without being able to adapt much more quickly, which has really been the force feeding the rise and the embrace of so-called no-code tools. This data from the folks at Airtable, found that people are embracing these tools first and foremost because of the greater ability to adapt to changing business needs, to have the ability to customize, tools in their MarTech stack to their needs, and to facilitate easier cross-departmental collaboration. The folks at Workato, who have a very popular workflow automation, iPaaS-related tool, they've seen this shift, where over time it's not just these IT teams that are building these automations, but it's almost now 50-50 with business owners, business teams, business ops folks really driving a lot of these automations as well, too. And again, when we think about no-code, it's easy to think about, things like, oh, well, no code, like building an app or, a web page or things like that, which definitely a lot of things for that. But it's not just that. It's this whole idea of empowering non-specialists to be able to self-serve more and more of their needs across a wide range of things. Even as we were talking about AI, there are quote unquote no-code tools for natural language processing, for computer vision, for predictive analytics. This is putting so much power in the hands of individuals, has such enormous opportunity to raise the productivity inside the modern digital org. We've been seeing this rise of creators out on the web, these individuals, on social media and, driving their own podcasts and their own micro businesses. Phenomenal force. But there's so much opportunity for us to leverage no-code tools to harness this same kind of creator energy inside our companies as well, too. Our good folks, friends at LXA Hub, formerly the Martech Alliance, they'd found this analysis a year ago of, more than half of these Martech stacks have some degree of customization that's happening in them. This is something that this no-code tool phenomenon really is empowering. All right, one last trend I want to touch on. I'm going to turn it over to Frans to talk about how you navigate through all of this, which has the question mark Web3 and metaverse. You'd think, like, talking about big trends, if like at the beginning of this year I said we're gonna have a session at the end of the year talking about big trends for 2023, people would say like, okay, well, Web3 and metaverse, they're going to be at the top of that. Well, all right, call me a little more skeptical. I appreciate Tarek Kawaja of Numa Partners. Also has a great sense of humor about Martech. Put together the realistic Web3 glossary, and the skepticism shines through. And I think actually from what we've seen this year, it's well-founded. It's not that blockchain and, the crypto technologies, NFTs, it's not that there isn't innovation happening there and that doesn't have a very bright future. It's just we're not quite there yet. And even the same thing with, metaverse. So the CMO survey, I'd quoted them earlier, even just a few months ago, they'd asked companies, who'd had a whole year up until now of, hype about NFTs, that they just haven't been able to put this effectively in use in their marketing strategies. Now, again, there's a lot of really exciting innovation that's happening in that space. We see the same thing if we think about the metaverse, the company Meta, and the hype around that may have gone a bit ahead of itself, but when we actually look at the evolution of like VR and AR technology, it is getting better and better every year. And we know there's going to be a tremendous amount of innovation in these spaces ahead. It's just, we're not there quite yet. So for 2023, we'd keep all those things in a sort of experimental basis, given that the other trends have so much huge real world opportunity for you to take advantage of now. And how do you do that? Well, Frans, will take it away.
Before we do that, I want to ask you a question. So what is it you think of those trends that you just shared with us? Which one is having the biggest impact, and how will that look like and have an impact on our, business lives?
Oh man, that's a tough question to answer. All of those are pretty big trends. I think I would say the generative AI is probably the one that has the most exponential disruptive possibility ahead. The other things like, getting all of our data connected, we've still got a lot of work to do, but we kind of see that road ahead. The same thing with ecosystems and communities. That trend has been building here for a while. There's sort of a linear evolution there. Same thing with even like no-code tools. But generative AI, I think this has caught a lot of people by surprise about how quickly this is becoming impactful. And it's sort of what they say about exponential curves, everything looks flat behind you and everything looks like, steep on the road up ahead. I think it's just actually going to be really hard to predict how the generative AI is going to change marketing and the world more broadly. But I think it's going to change it in some really big ways.
Oh, I love that. So basically you're saying it's hard to predict how it will change. So how can we prepare for this? And that's exactly what we're going to talk about Martech management in 2023. So let's not forget that marketing, and I love this quote, I should probably tattoo it somewhere on my arm. Marketing is the customer story well told at the boardroom table. And I think it was Brene Brown who said, stories are data with a soul. So we're the soul, and if we don't know what's hitting us, how can we, prep for it? And we've been thinking and talking about this. Well, we're all convinced Martech plays an important role, increasingly important role. We're more and more aware, as you can see on the numbers here, that it plays a part in a marketing strategy, probably even company strategy. So what we see is that, in the old days, we thought digital transformation is it. And we see a lot of people struggling just with digital transformation. Companies are using more software. But since COVID, a second wave is hitting us of digital transformation, which is companies become software. And I can hear you think, give an example. And here's an example. I love this one, which is John Deere. They sell tractors, right? Agricultural machinery, blah, blah. Cool. But they attached IoT to their tractors, and now they can track the growth of crops. And they can share and upload that data across servers, across the planet with other farmers and see how they, benchmark. And these farmers, they just log into a portal, pay a subscription fee, and suddenly John Deere is a data and technology company. Who would have thought that? And that's digital transformation 2.0. And it's not only that. So how do companies deal with that? Well, we see in our client base and also in the market, in newspapers, that non-Martech companies are buying Martech, not just because they buy a license. No, they buy the company. It's just like you go to a restaurant, you order a dish. No, you buy the restaurant. That's what's happening. And it's amazing. So you see MasterCard buying Dynamic Yield. It's a personalization tool to integrate it into their ecosystem. how are they doing that? And everyone's getting into marketing. You see the Luma quote on the left-hand side. It's all about media and retail monetization. We spoke about ad tech being democratized. Yes, it probably is, because every supermarket, retail chain, consumer goods company, they have ad inventory and they can sell that. They are selling it. They just don't have the tools for it. So you know what? We'll just buy one. And it's amazing what they're doing. And there's so many different ways of applying Martech and AI. I love this one because it really states who and what and where. And that's how we start to understand what's the human aspect of this, because data is nice, content is nice, technology is nice, but we have to convince a customer out there to buy our products and our services. So in the next slide, we want to come back to something we shared last time. It's the hype cycle. And the hype cycle is really a nice example of how markets embrace new technology. Scott just said it, generative AI, we don't know what is hitting us. So we're really on the left-hand side of that hype cycle. We have no clue what will happen. So we have to figure it out, learning by doing. But the thing is, it's not only applying to markets, it's also applying to companies and to individuals. I see companies that haven't implemented CRM yet. They found a way to do it in a different way still. And CRM in the market is really down the curve of the hype cycle, whereas that company is really at the beginning. So it's always the question, is it new to the market, to your company, or to you? And that's beautiful, because then you can start playing around, finding skill sets and training people inside your team, your company, and hire people and say, okay, how do we work with this? Because initially, at the beginning of the hype cycle, you see that people have the wrong intuition, then the wrong analysis, then the right analysis, and the right intuition. The right intuition is nothing else than it has become second nature. It's unconscious competence. So with a hype cycle, it's not only the hype cycle, the same flow and hype cycle you see in the Dunning-Kruger ability curve. Fantastic. In the beginning, we're not hindered by any knowledge or experience. Everything will change for the better. No problem. Blockchain, NFT, change the world. I have no clue how, but it will. And then at the peak, of inflated expectations, we go like, oh boy, this is really not working. Everything is wrong. So we really go bipolar, down, all to the level of the trough of disillusions. And then scope of enlightenment. There we start to figure out in our free fall, hold on, not this whole tool or new technology is working, but these three pieces, they did really a conversion trick for our customers. Atomization, that's what we're talking about. So what are the key features that are really changing the mind of the customers, the minds and the hearts of the customers? And funny enough, there's another curve that we could apply. It's the grief curve, or emotions. And this one will make you paranormal. You will be able to predict, the behavior of your teams and your colleagues, because some people are really in denial, mostly in management. They go like, we buy a tool, it will solve everything. We have to have a future-proof tool, and we get it the first time right. No, that's not how life works. So we get an anger attack, then we get a depression, then we start to bargain and see what works and what doesn't work. And then finally, we are at the plateau of productivity. Fantastic. Now, how do we harness all this? And this is a great map that shows you exactly what are the signs that you will see inside your company that people will explain. In the beginning, it's something like, we need something future-proof. Yes, if your name is Nostradamus, I think that will work. But I don't think we are family or related to that person, so it's not going to fly. At the top, we found this new technology or tool isn't working for us. So at the top, we go like, you know what? Let's customize the hell out of this thing. We are special. We are so unique. And down, all the way down, you see one quote saying, shit, we bought a Ferrari while we needed a Volkswagen because we just learned how to ride a bike. Okay, let's ride a bike and let's see which features and data sets and content pieces are really converting this type of customer. And then you get in the green zone, and this is where you really start to learn and apply and take a completely different look. Now, the secret is, how can we make sure that we don't buy too many tools at the beginning? In the next slide, you will see that we looked at, it's a slide we shared last time as well, but now we combine it with the hype cycle. We looked at all the stacks and the maturity levels, really from we have no clue to, okay, we have standardized stuff, now we have fully optimized stuff, and the amount of tools that they have. And somehow we find a way to flatten this curve, right-size the Martech stack. And let's have a look at the next slide, because this is really helping you with creating a business case. If you don't manage the hype cycle in your company, in your team, or for yourself, you'll overinvest, disinvest, reinvest. That's very expensive. You have to stay within those green dotted lines if possible. So that also applies to generative AI, for instance. On the next slide, you'll see how we can do that. And it really hit me with a presentation of Daryl Alfonso in London. He was talking about productizing marketing. I was like, what does that mean? Because up until then, I've been working with this model, like you have projects, then you go into a process, and then you create products. Not necessarily sellable products. It could be commercial, with a price tag to it sold to customers, but it can also be internally, microservices. What we say here about productization is really zero maintenance, lights out marketing. No, it doesn't mean you don't have a job anymore. It's more like you can free up your time to do more experiments, because that's the other word for projects. So let us explain projects, process, and products in the next slide. What you see is that every project is basically a campaign. It has a start and end date. And we do many of those. Many companies just do only projects, but they are in essence experimentations. And that's where we learn what works and what doesn't work. And once you see patterns across projects, you can start a process. You can templatize, standardize, you can create taxonomies, best practice campaigns, and what have you. And now suddenly we are in a completely different state where we have processes standardized. And everything you standardize, you can automate, because the exceptions are out and only the rules are in. And now we can productize and make sure that we have everything in place. Now, the next slide, you see how you do this. This is what we see with many companies where they play around with, let's say, a hack version. Anything goes, just pull the data and technology together. It's rapid prototyping, see if it works. And if it sticks and it's outside your ecosystem, if it works, okay, then we'll use it. And then we'll take it to a next level if the client likes it. Then we'll take it into standardization. And that's what we call a pack version, clean up. Just because in the hack version, we use a lot of data points, technologies, integrations, all good for the sake of creating traction. Once we have that and we have the customer delight, now we clean up and we leave everything out. If you have done that, you know what the essence is of that product, of that customer experience, and you can put it into your stack, your platform ecosystem. The goal is there, zero maintenance. Free up your efforts and your resources, because otherwise you're stuck in releases with software all the time. Funny enough, what I see, and I would love to get your feedback on this, I see people that are really hack focused and are very good hackers, but they can't really pack it. You need other people to hand over to. Some people are both hack and pack, but not stack. So it really helps you to create these kind of improvement cycles. And this is how you can harness generative AI, You just create projects and you see what works. It's not only for AI and tooling, you can do it for best of data and best of content. And I love the thought experiment, again, by Daryl Alfonso, where he said, do you want to use all of your software, all your features, and not hit your goals because you're so occupied with just launching the thing? Or is it the other way around? Are you just using 2 or 3 features and hit your goals? And those goals are not maybe your company goals, but your proposition, your business proposition to a specific customer base. So I love that way of thinking. It's turning everything around. And what you basically do, you know how to aggregate because you atomize yourself, because the projects and experiments is your own job atomization, or your task atomization, I should say. So in the next slide, I see also, this is a great graph by Geert Klaas, where he talks about, in different areas, you need different approaches. It's not only skill sets or mindsets or comfort zones of people, it's also the way you work. It's design thinking, lean startup, they fit different purposes. And all too often is this, like Scott said in the first age of Martech, is this dichotomy between it's good or bad, it's this or that. No, it's not. It's all of the above. But you have to know when to apply it, because they all have their advantages that you should harness. In the next slide, we talk about how to drive your marketing backlog. And what I just showed you is a lot of experimentation in the last 5 years I did with people like yourself at business schools and universities, going back and forth and creating plans, actual plans that they need to implement inside in their company. And they ultimately always end up with a kind of a backlog. They go like, okay, for this audience, And for that proposition, I need this data set. And normally it's not millions of data points, it's 3 to 5 that really make a difference. Same applies to content, same applies to your features. And then suddenly the atomization is not that daunting anymore. It's not that big anymore. It's not overwhelming. It's just, okay, it's like a supermarket. You don't buy all the products in there. You just buy the ones you need, and then you're good to go. So the next slide is something we would really strongly recommend you. Create a visualization of your stack. All too often, we don't see that. And I expect that the audience coming to our session here now today is probably working on it, but we see 70% of the marketers are not even aware of this. They don't have a canvas, they don't have a blueprint, or whatever name you give it. Start plotting tools and share it with other people, because if you plot tools, you only got 60% of it. There's much more. And then benchmark it, see what others do, and create integrations, because those are the key integration points, not integrating everything with everything, just those that you need. Same applies to your content. You can map it on here. And that gives you a bit of rest. If you don't have this, then I would strongly recommend you to create your next panic attacks, I don't know, in the next meeting in your team. I think we're ready for some closing thoughts here, Scott.
That's awesome, Frans. Yeah, try not to schedule panic attacks. Well, actually, to that point, this evolution from projects, up to actual products, where do you see companies are at right now? Like, how do they, organizationally get from one to the other?
It's a very slow process. I see some, going into agile and harnessing it. Others are still in Gantt chart type of environments. So when I teach at business schools, I always ask the question by raise of hands, tell me how many of you know the logo landscape? And it's a shocking, well, a good day is 50% from digital marketers, and they're digital leaders. They are 20, 30 years in the job. I find that scary, and I know I scare them with the logos, but I think they scare me more with not knowing how to harness this. So we have a lot of stuff to do, and I think people still are struggling with getting their arms around digital transformation 1.0. 2.0 will, I don't know what it will do to them, but it's big.
Yeah, no, it's as what Dickens would say, the best of times and the worst of times. Well, given all of this, I don't know, what would be one thing that you are particularly looking forward to in 2023?
Wow. I would love marketing ops to take over the world, because that's not the purpose in itself. It's the people with that mindset that, can hack, pack and stack. It's their second nature, and they will have to lead the way. And I strongly recommend always, and maybe I'm preaching it to the choir, but marketing ops should be part of marketing. That's why the word marketing is in there. And I see sometimes that they're shifted to IT. No, it's a business view on how it works. And these people will lead the way through hype cycles. And I really think, that they'll have to take a leading role here and explain at the boardroom table how to behave towards, how to incorporate all those atomized new features and tools out there. And that's if there's one thing I would like to do on a daily basis, is convince boardrooms just about that.
We definitely have our work cut out for us there, but I think, yeah, boy, that would be exactly what I would really look forward here in 2023. Is I feel like, this, if I can collectively pull all of this into the second age of Martech transition that we're going through, we've sort of seen the early components of that, the early steps of that, over these past couple of years, but I suspect for a lot of people, in our audience right now, again, this all seems like pretty new stuff. And I think if we can fast forward to 12 months from now, it's not going to be that new anymore. This is actually, we are going to collectively as an industry recognize that we have gone through this transition. And I kind of feel like the one thing that's a constant through all of this is change. I think for over the past decade that you and I have been advising people on, Martech and marketing, the one piece of advice that just stays true again and again is increase your adaptability. Whether it's the way in which you architect your tech stack to support more of these aggregation patterns that gives you the ability to adapt to new tools, to this new atomization that we see out in the marketplace. Whether it's the way in which you change the way in which your team runs, to embrace various agile management methodologies. Again, all through the lens of being able to just increase the ability to adapt to a world that is changing at a pretty wild rate. Any last piece of advice you would offer, my friend?
Yeah, it just occurred to me as a thought that I had this week about AI in general and people losing their job because of it's taking over humans, etc. I think this soul piece is always important. And think back of the time that we started with photography. Did it kill art? No, it maybe stopped the realistic painting more and earlier than we hoped for. But a whole new wave of creativity came to us, with cubism and what have you, pointillism. So I think, it will come with a lot of new opportunities. We just don't know which ones. And I think we should try to embrace that and not be scared of it. But yeah, that's easier said than done.
Wow. Well, that's well said. I'm just going to close this out by, going back to where we started. Yes, this is an incredible set of changes that we are all facing, and it's going to be challenging, but it's from this crucible that we are forging the future. We are writing the future of marketing together, and as challenging as it is, it's actually a real privilege for all of us, to have this opportunity to shape what this new future looks like. So again, on behalf of our sponsors, SAS, Uptempo, Calendly, our Goldcast, G2, Clearbit, thank you so much for joining us. Right after this session, Frans and I are going to be jumping into some of the networking rooms here on the Goldcast platform for a half hour. If you want to stick around and have any sort of live questions, happy to talk with you. Otherwise, we just want to say thank you. We hope you have a wonderful close to 2022 and wish you the absolute best success in 2023 ahead. Thank you.
Bye.